Hello and welcome to the Monday edition of Channel 51 News. And I hope that you're getting this either directly from Channel 51 or perhaps you are watching on the Cafe Lockdown Network or listening in on WRMI. And of course, tons of news always coming through and how we can negotiate what's really happening out there amidst a form of revolution, one way or another, because we are seeing things that are unprecedented in the world today. And I'll tell you what, the rallies at the weekend, Pro Palestine, certainly show a divide in the country, but it seems to be a real split. And therefore, the numbers are bigger than you could possibly imagine. And the suppression of numbers is also just as interesting, because whilst organisers are talking about hundreds of thousands of people attending, official numbers from police are saying tens of thousands of people attended the various rallies. Why is that important? Well, we saw the same thing happening in the COVID era when we saw extremely large crowds rallying back then in the period 2020-2021, and there were at least hundreds of thousands of people attending in those rallies, marching through the streets of Sydney, and the police would say 10,000 people attended. Why the discrepancy in the numbers? Is it to discourage people from going along? Or is it for some other reason? Or maybe it is just the general public can't count and they get overexcited. But when you see the crowds crossing bridges, you know that these are massive numbers. And therefore, what is really going on here? Is the government the one that's holding us back? Whichever way that we believe in what's really going on. Well, let's now cut to a report, this one from Al Jazeera's Sarah Clark, covering the rallies at the weekend.
It's heard. The centre of Brisbane was brought to a standstill, with road closures as tens of thousands of people called for an end to Israel's war on Gaza.
I think it's atrocious that the Palestinians are being treated worse than we treat animals.
Every time I picture those families and children and see them starving and crying out for food, I just picture how that would feel as a mother.
I have a child, seeing children her own age, being killed. Even if I didn't have a child, I think, the fact that we can see all these things firsthand being televised and still allowing it to happen, it's pretty disgusting.
It wasn't just in Brisbane. Thousands of people joined rallies in state capitals across Australia in a coordinated national day of action. Their message: the government must do more, targeted sanctions on Israel and an end to Australia's arms trade with Israel.
We demand from our politicians more than just talk. We're long past this now. We demand actions in the same way we acted in times of genocide. We are signatories to the Genocide Convention, which means that we have an obligation to prevent and punish genocide when it occurs.
Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has confirmed Australia will recognise Palestinian statehood at the UN General Assembly next month. The federal government has also pledged $85 million in humanitarian aid. But protesters say words and pledges are not enough.
There are more rallies planned in coming weeks, not just here in Brisbane, but around the country, as the people of Australia are calling for tougher action from the federal government.
These demonstrations are more than a show of solidarity. They are demands for accountability.
Meanwhile, Anthony Albanese has jumped ahead, announcing that from October 1, the new 5% home deposit scheme will take place. Now, it's not a big deal to consider that you've always been able to get a home loan on a 5% deposit, subject to meeting lender criteria. It's always the same two things: security and serviceability. So security means that you get the bank to lend you a percentage of the value of the home that you wish to purchase. And that idea meaning that if you can raise 5%, the bank can lend you 95%. And the concept being that if you're ever forced to sell your home, well, the bank will be able to recoup the money that it is owed. And therefore, it used to be that 20% would be the amount that would be needed to create said buffer. Now, over the years, that reduced to 10% and then to 5%. And in fact, some lenders lend at 97%. And what that means is that you have to put down 5%, but they also capitalise LMI. And that is called lender's mortgage insurance. Now, what lender's mortgage insurance is an insurance premium paid to paid by the lender to ensure that you don't default on your loan. So you have to cough up that amount of money. And therefore, an insurance company will make up any form of gap. Now, what some lenders have been able to do in the past was to capitalize that amount onto the loan. Seems kind of ironic, but that's the idea. So you'd pay a premium, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 put onto your loan that you would have to pay back in time, that was paid by the lender just in case you defaulted, to protect the lender at the end of the day. It seems complicated. Well, now what's happening with this whole new scheme from the Albanese government from the 1st of October is that the first home buyer will not be responsible for finding that LMI premium. Rather, the government will be ponying that up on behalf of the person who is taking out the loan. So taxpayer funds will now mean that the government is providing LMI for first home buyers. Now, that's quite noble, isn't it, when you think that the government's going to front up $15,000 or $20,000. It's kind of like the old first home buyers grant, but in a different component. But you've still got to come up with the 5% savings. So if you were looking at a property worth $800,000, let's say, not much in Sydney, of course, but in other places, still you can buy something significant, and you need to come up with $40,000 worth of savings. So that will be out of the realm of possibility for a lot of people. But once you start to save up some money and you get onto a plan, and maybe you've paid off a car, you sell a car, and you may put $10,000 or $15,000 into your savings and continue building, you're on your way to getting there. That is the whole idea. Bringing forward expanded first home buyer deposit schemes to make an enormous difference. He says bringing the 5% deposit expansion forward by 3 months will make an enormous difference. The expansion removes the income caps and means any first home buyer can access the scheme. It also increases the house price cap across the country, because we know how quickly those house prices are rising. Now, on ABC's RN Breakfast, Albanese was running through the numbers and the talking points, and he says those using the scheme should avoid about $1.5 billion in potential mortgage insurance costs over the next year. So the government would be assumed to self-insure. So if someone is going to default in that period of time, it'll be the government that will have to either find the insurance scheme to do it or to pay the difference themselves. So they're very excited about it. But of course, the house prices are incredibly expensive, and it will kick in for those up to $1.5 million in Sydney and lower amounts in other states. Melbourne, it's $950,000, Brisbane, $1 million, and in other states, slightly less. But it does provide hope for those first home buyers who are looking to get into the market. Now, meanwhile, let's head over now to the United States. And Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, has declassified over 100 documents on the 2016 Russiagate investigation. And of course, it's a big deal. Now, the reason we're going to do now, what we're going to do now is recap now in a lead up for what is the most significant development in recent political history, whereby one particular administration is certainly in the frame. Let's go back now to this interview where Matt Gaetz starts and explains.
We now know without a doubt that Obama, Brennan, Clapper, and Comey were attacking our democracy, all while accusing us of attacking democracy. We know these things because Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard has released hundreds of documents revealing that the mindful objections of senior intel officials were ignored. Foreign spies were given a U.S. government-endorsed platform to smear Trump with abject lies. They used these lies to illegally spy on the Trump campaign. Former CIA Director John Brennan lied to Congress about his role. The cover-up effort was real. Now that Director Gabbard has revealed the truth, where will it all lead? In 2016, nobody believed it possible for Donald Trump to defeat Hillary Clinton. When he did, it seems President Obama just couldn't take it. He convened a December 9th, 2016 meeting in the White House Situation Room just weeks after Hillary Clinton conceded. He ordered an ICA, or Intelligence Community Assessment, to functionally attribute Trump's unexpected win to the doings of Vladimir Putin. That Obama-ordered phony assessment was about politics, not national security or the truth.
We have found the evidence that proves that this Obama-led intelligence community assessment was a contrived document that was knowingly made using fake intelligence or substandard intelligence in order to drive this conclusion that President Obama wanted to see, which was that Russia helped Donald Trump get elected in 2016, or at least aspired to. This directly contradicted every other intelligence community assessment, every other assessment that came from the intelligence community for the last several months prior, both before the 2016 election as well as immediately after.
Your investigation uncovered witnesses who told you that, or told your team that CIA Director John Brennan overruled intelligence officials who were objecting to the inclusion of the Steele dossier in the intelligence community assessment. How well would some of those witnesses hold up in court or in a public hearing of the House Oversight Committee?
Well, these are some of the most senior intelligence officials within the CIA who came forward and spoke the truth to the House Intelligence Committee's majority staff team that launched this investigation. They spoke to and interviewed over 20 intelligence community professionals, senior officials within the CIA, which is how they uncovered the truth of what actually happened as reported in the documents that we released yesterday. The second thing is I can speak from a firsthand account about the whistleblower within ODNI who worked for then Obama's DNI, James Clapper, about how he refused to go along with this. As a result, he was sidelined and cut out of this. He was the cyber guy in the Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper's team. He was sidelined because he wouldn't play along with the lie that they were creating. And he did blow the whistle. He raised this through the ICIG. He tried to raise this with multiple members of Congress, including Senator Warner. He never got calls back. They were not interested in what he had to say and what he had experienced. He even tried then to go and report this to the Department of Justice under President Biden and was refused. No action. They were not interested in taking action in this.
There is irrefutable evidence that detail how President Obama and his national security team directed the creation of an intelligence community assessment that they knew was false. They knew it would promote this contrived narrative that Russia interfered in the 2016 election to help President Trump win, selling it to the American people as though it were true. It wasn't. The report that we released today shows in great detail how they carried this out. They manufactured findings from shoddy sources. They suppressed evidence and credible intelligence that disproved their false claims. They disobeyed traditional tradecraft intelligence community standards and withheld the truth from the American people. In doing so, they conspired to subvert the will of the American people who elected Donald Trump in that election in November of 2016. They worked with their partners in the media to promote this lie, ultimately to undermine the legitimacy of President Trump and launching what would be a years-long coup against him and his administration.
Moving on now, and John Solomon has spoken to Maria Bartiromo about further developments leading all the way up to what he believes are real grand jury investigations going ahead right now and may or may not result in charges.
Joining me now is the man who broke the story wide open, the editor-in-chief of Just the News, John Solomon. John, great to have you this morning. Thank you so much for being here. What can you tell us about this breaking news?
Well, this is a familiar story, a protection racket, right? Anytime a Democrat or a friend of a Democrat in government has wrongdoing lodged against them, there is a protection racket. I want to remind people that around the time that the Justice Department, the Trump Justice Department, discovered this evidence, James Comey had testified that he and his top lieutenants weren't leaking. The Justice Department knew that to be false. They had evidence that Comey authorized his chief of staff, James Rubicki, to allow his chief counsel, James Baker, to leak a classified piece of information, actually two pieces of information, to the New York Times back in 2016. Baker acknowledged it, admitted it. So you had an inner circle player inside James Comey's inner circle that could say there was a leak of classified information. It was authorized by James Comey, and it did contradict James Comey's testimony to Congress, and they took no action. It's a familiar vein. It doesn't matter whether it's the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton emails, the Hunter Biden tax problems. Every time agents tried to bring legitimate cases against people, they got shut down. It was like the steel curtain of politics.
Is there criminality here, John?
certainly leaking of information, unless the person's authorized to do so, is criminal. And by the way, this may not be a historical exercise, the release of these documents. Under some statutes, including the Internal Security Act of 1950, there's a 10-year statute of limitations for willing and knowing leaks of classified information that harm the national interest. We'll have to see if the Pam Bondi Justice Department goes in that direction. The other thing that is pretty interesting, and we know this for sure, Kash Patel opened up a predicated criminal case that looks at the last 10 years of weaponization as one ongoing conspiracy, sort of like the mob skimming profits off of casinos across multiple casinos over decades. You can go back and charge things outside of the statute of limitations when you look at this as one ongoing conspiracy to protect Democrats and to violate the civil liberties of Republicans and conservatives who were targeted. So that's two options that Pam Bondi's Justice Department has. The question is, will they go that route? There is some sign of activity before multiple grand juries around the country. So things are starting to ramp up. We'll see if that leads to charges.
Meanwhile, General Michael Flynn had spoke to Lara Logan, and he has put another warning out with 3.5 years to go of the Trump term in office, talking about how America is really falling into a communist slide.
We have got to stop this movement that is a movement towards a Marxist communist state here in the United States of America. And part of that intent is clearly demonstrated in the number of illegals that they allowed into this country to vote. I mean, never mind what's happening out in California. It's happening in Florida. Mm-hmm. It's happening in Texas.
That's right.
In all their big swing states, right? North Carolina, Pennsylvania, yep. Wisconsin, Michigan. I mean, all these places. So everybody better wake up out there. You're a listening audience, the audience that hears these clips or whatever. We have got to get people so involved in being citizens again. Otherwise, we're going to lose this country. Well, Trump has 3.5 years left, and those 3.5 years are going to go by very fast.
And if that weren't enough, New York Mayor favorite Zoran Mamdani, he's gone full communist. He is now saying he wants to end all misdemeanor charges. An easy pass for criminals, according to the New York Post. Just imagine that. On one side of the world, or America at least, Donald Trump is out there with the National Guard removing crime from Washington, D.C., where there hasn't been a homicide in that area for the last 10 days. And, of course, he's now headed to Chicago, but Mamdani in New York is going the other way. He just wants to get rid of the acknowledgement of crime altogether, misdemeanor charges. Would that just mean free shoplifting for anyone who wants to participate? Free speeding tickets, for example. How far does this go? And how far have we come since the days of Rudy Giuliani and the way that he cleaned up New York in the 90s? Many people said it was to do with what they call zero tolerance, when in fact it was the mobilization of the police based on reporting on each day. So where crimes were occurring, that's where the police were being sent to overwhelm the areas and to prevent crime and pick people up for the simple things. It was about the squeegee window washers. Somebody who broke a window would often be wanted for more serious charges, and that's how Giuliani cleaned it up. It's amazing, isn't it, how such a system can be politically overturned simply by Democrats taking over and going down a very different pathway, and what people will tolerate in the name of what their party is doing. We'll see what happens there in America. Meanwhile, J.D. Vance has chimed in relation to Russia, Ukraine and the negotiations, where there has been a little bit frosty because Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, is saying that there is no place yet for the follow-up meeting between Russia and Ukraine. Meanwhile, Ukraine, on their 34th anniversary, has decided that it won't be giving up any land, so the tit-for-tat, back to square one. Here's J.D. Vance.
I think the Russians have made significant concessions to President Trump for the first time in 3.5 years of this conflict. They've actually been willing to be flexible on some of their core demands. They've talked about what would be necessary to end the war. Of course, they haven't been completely there yet, or the war would be over, but we're engaging in this diplomatic process in good faith. We are trying to negotiate as much as we can with both the Russians and the Ukrainians to find a middle ground to stop the killing. I think what the president president has tried to do here is try to engage in very aggressive, very energetic diplomacy, because this war is not in anyone's interest. It's not in Europe or the United States' interest. We don't think it's in Russia or Ukraine's interest to keep going. So we're going to keep on pushing for a diplomatic solution. And one final point about this, Kristen, if you look historically, whenever you have a complicated war with a lot of death and destruction, it kind of goes in fits and starts. There are hills and valleys to the negotiation. We sometimes feel like we've made great progress with the Russians, and sometimes, as the president has said, he's been very frustrated with the Russians. And we're going to keep on doing what we have to do to bring this thing to a close. I don't think it's going to happen overnight. I think that we're going to continue to make progress, but ultimately, whether the killing stops, that determination is going to belong to whether the Russians and the Ukrainians can actually find some middle ground.
Meanwhile, over in the US, continuing, Todd Blanche's conversation with Ghislaine Maxwell has certainly caught interest, and a lot of people not necessarily believing what Ghislaine Maxwell was saying, one of which was she claims that Bill Clinton never went to the island. Does that then discredit everything that she's saying, or do you take what she's saying as a basis for building up more information? Well, I'm going to play part of that recording now for you, and it's concerning where Todd Blanche is questioning her relationship with both Bill and Hillary Clinton. And what comes out is quite interesting, where she says that she was part of the build-up of the Clinton Global Initiative. Very interesting, because this is a spin-off of the Clinton Foundation. Let's take a listen.
When just still staying on your relationship with, your association with the Clintons, you were part of the ramp up or the startup of the Clinton Global Initiative and helping them and supporting that effort.
I would say very central to that, yes.
And Mr. Epstein, was he part of the work around that, or just in support of you?
He supported me to help them.
When's the last time that you went on a trip or saw President Clinton?
It was was late 2000 and I don't know, 16, 17, 8, something. It was in Los Angeles.
And what was the purpose of that meeting?
He was hosting something, or he was at an event, and I was in LA, and I had dinner with him.
Did you ever meet Secretary Clinton, Hillary Clinton?
Yes.
When did you meet her?
I want to say, again, please don't hold me to it, but I want to say that it was on a flight that came from the island, from the Nantucket or Martha's Vineyard back to New York, is what I think. I might be wrong.
Okay, so an East Coast island like Nantucket or something like this.
The ex-president never came to the island.
And is that the only time that you met Hillary Clinton?
No. I went to the house in Chappaqua a few times.
And why did you go to the house?
I was invited.
Just to see President Clinton or Hillary Clinton or both, or?
Yeah, I mean, as a friend, not for. I don't remember any reason. Either was somehow I communicated that was in driving back past Chappaqua if they were home and stopping. I know it sounds a little flippant, but it could have been even something as.
And do you know whether Mr. Epstein knew or had any sort of business dealings or associated with Hillary Clinton?
I would say no.
Did you ever see them together?
No.
Do you know whether Mr. Epstein ever did any business transactions with the Clintons?
I'm not sure I'm not sure how to quite. I don't know the answer to that strictly, because I was part of the beginning process of the Clinton Global Initiative, and that was something that I helped with, and that was me. And Epstein may have helped me help them. And in that context, he may well have involved himself, but only in the context of something that I was trying to do.
So when you say involved himself, meaning like give money to the Clinton Global Initiative or something like this?
Well, so there's that. I think he did do that, and that I believe the money that he may have given could have been independent of me. But I think it's just easier if I just tell you how it happened, rather than, because otherwise it sounds all odd and funky. I went to Davos with the former president, and have you been to Davos?
In what?
Have you been to Davos?
I have not.
Okay, well, you know what it is, right? Okay, so, and I thought that the former president should have his own Davos, because it would be, and it turned out that they had been thinking about it anyway, and so we were talking about it, and it's a very heavy lift to get something like that to go. And I was friendly with one of the people who had, I don't know if he was at the beginning of Davos, but he was running Davos. There was this, I don't know how to describe his actual role at Davos, and I had conversations with him about what did he think, just because I was having dinner with him, about if Clinton could get something like that to go, what was his thoughts? And he was very, very enthusiastic. I mean, he was like, that's just an incredible idea. So I put them together.
And coming up this week on Channel 51 and QCitizen.net, a really, really busy week. Sunday, we had the launch of Smart Casual with Jason and Maria. Brand new show showing lots of new ideas, hope, and a fresh look at the world. Also tonight we will have not one but two Australian MK Ultra victims tell their story, and that will go out at 9 p.m. Tuesday I've got LA Private Detective Neil Scrivilius. That is going to be fascinating when we consider what he has looked at in terms of crimes being committed in the United States. John Richardson on Wednesday from the Richardson Nutritional Centre. We're going to talk all about cancer. And then on Thursday, one of the highlights of the year for me, Dr. Sunil Dant, who I've been following for at least 5 years on social media and seen his career on YouTube blossom from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of YouTube's followers. And we're going to talk about the collapse of the medicine or the system, and of course in the era of entitlement. That will be fascinating. And then Friday and Saturday, two from the vault from earlier this year, Lionel Nation and Charles Ortel, which will form part 3 of the Clinton crime series. So I hope you've enjoyed and continuing to enjoy Channel 51 News, and of course the long form interviews. And you saw many of them last week: Kathy O'Brien, Scott Wheeler, Dr. John Brady, and others, of course. Then there was Rob McMullen as well on Monday, talking about natural law in the age of artificial intelligence. So lots and lots of things happening. Really appreciate your support, and more interviews coming along, and continuing to watch the developments. And we'll certainly see the news cycle break with the US certain to change it up big time tomorrow. And we'll continue because we're also waiting on the results of the Erin Patterson pre-trial hearing to determine what's going to happen there. Tell you what, it is not looking at all like Erin Patterson will see, well, freedom ever again in her lifetime. Frightening, some of the information that's being released now, and we're going to hear a lot more, and we'll cover that story for you tomorrow. Thanks everyone for watching. See you all on the next show.